As is usually the case for things like this, the person with the gun became the de facto man in charge. I will give him some credit. He started off okay. Our first course of action was a group field trip to the basement, where Tobias put in a call to the local authorities. We were informed that, owing due to the storm and our remote location, it would take about an hour before anybody could reach us. That's when Tobias's leadership skills took a steep nosedive. In the end, he stole Jerry's original plan and told everyone to go wait in their rooms until the authorities arrived. With the allegedly blind man now in the wind, I had slipped into the number 2 spot on the group's most likely to be the killer list. But that didn't mean they were ready to line up and do trust falls with me. Tobias kept his gun in hand as he chauffeured us to each of our rooms, instructing us to lock our doors and stay put. As Jerry wandered the suite looking for bugs, I sat at the edge of the bed, trying to make sense of everything. But this puzzle, it was just missing too many pieces. How could someone have orchestrated something like this? Why would they? Who killed the old woman? What was going to happen next? Those particular mysteries were way too abstract for my brain to get any foothold. But I had no trouble with this one. Why does Tobias want us to stay in our rooms? It made no sense. Tobias had demonstrated a certain degree of intelligence that led me to assume that he knew why separating into smaller, easier to target groups was a bad idea. We only needed to survive for like an hour. Why wouldn't he want us to stay together? The answer came to me out of nowhere. He needed to get rid of us so that he could use the phone without anyone witnessing. I couldn't explain how or why I knew, but I was certain that this was the answer. Tobias had a secret. He was playing dumb, but he knew more than he was letting on. And he might not be the only one. I suddenly remembered the note, the one that Claire gave me shortly before the lights went out. I dug it out of my pocket, unfolded it, and read the message. "We're all going to die here tonight." It wasn't really helpful, I thought, crumpling up the paper and tossing it into a trash can. Jerry fell on the bed next to me with a defeated sigh. "I can't find the bugs anywhere, dude." "Jerry," I started. "You remember when we first left the car and I explicitly said no weapons?" "Yeah?" "Is there any chance you completely ignored what I told you and smuggled one up here anyway?" He took a conspicuously sharp inhale and said, "What answer won't make you mad at me?" "Ah, thank God, where is it?" Jerry rolled off the bed and crawled to the bathroom. He returned a moment later. He was holding his jeans. He dug through the pockets until he found a police-grade stun gun that he'd smuggled up here without my knowledge. He tossed it to me. I was both annoyed and relieved. At least now we could defend ourselves if we were lucky enough to see trouble coming ahead of time. But trouble always had a way of sneaking up on Jack? I spun around and trouble had snuck up on me. She was standing next to the bookcase, looking very different than when I first met her. She let her hair down and changed into a pair of jeans and a Nirvana t-shirt. If not for the black lipstick, I might not have recognized her right away. "Lauren," I said, careful not to make any sudden moves. If she'd come to kill me, it was awfully generous for her to give me a warning first. I didn't see any weapons in her hands this time, but I wasn't about to assume anything. "Hello there," Jerry said like it was a perfectly normal encounter. "I didn't think we'd have any company tonight. Quick question. You the murderer?" She crossed her arms and said, "No, are you?" He turned to me and said, "I believe her. I don't know why, but I do." I couldn't hold the question in any longer. "How'd you get here?" "There's a secret passage behind our bookshelf connecting the 2 rooms," she explained, pointing out the new entryway exposed in our wall. "Must be part of the murder mystery or whatever, but you guys know this whole situation is totally fucked, right?" I answered, "Yeah." And Jerry said, "Totally." She went on, "We're getting out of here. Do you boys want to come?" Jerry eagerly answered, "Always." But I wasn't so sure I could trust anyone who trusted us. The only way she could possibly know neither of us were the killer was if she already knew who the killer was, right? "Not so fast," I said. "What makes you so sure we even want to go with you?" Claire trusts you. That's good enough for me. Why does Claire trust us? Lauren seemed confused. She tilted her head and said, You do know what she is, right? What is she? You mean you don't already know? Can we just cut to the chase here? I'm tired of beating around the bush. Claire, well, she knows things that she shouldn't know. Sometimes she remembers things before they happen. And Lauren stopped and looked around the room. And what? And she can tell when people are about to die. I thought about the note crumpled up in the trash and asked a question I probably didn't want to know the answer to. Is she ever wrong? Well, she told me you were like her. Was she wrong about that? There's something messed up with me. I think that's what she meant. If what you're saying is true, then I think she and I ended up on opposite ends of the freak show lottery. But we've already spent too long discussing this. As I'm sure you've already gathered by now, we're being watched, which means they'll know any plan we come up with. Our best option is to work fast and stick together. Agreed. Let's get going. Claire's waiting for us. I knew the clock was ticking, and I didn't have time to second guess. Survival instincts kicked in, and now we're making our escape. Who the fuck is Claire? Jerry asked as we walked through the secret passageway. She was waiting for us at the end of the plain, dimly lit corridor connecting the two rooms. Claire held Lauren's butterfly knife in her hand, fully extended, pointing at the floor. I instantly knew without even asking that she was afraid of knives. She hated touching them. The only reason she had this one is because Lauren insisted she'd take it to arm herself a few moments ago, before heading through the secret passageway, leaving her alone and vulnerable. But did I know that because of the look on her face? The body language? Or was there something else at play? Was there something that was putting ideas into my head again? Damn, I really need to get my medicine before we leave. Claire smiled with her eyes when she saw us coming. I noticed that she had already changed out of her clothes for the escape. A knee-length floral skirt and long black sleeve blouse that didn't quite match. Still, it would serve its purpose if we needed to run. As soon as we entered the room, I forgot what was going on and tried for the mandatory pleasantries. Claire, this is... She cut me off. Jerry. I know. Jerry smiled and whispered, Dude, I'm famous. Lauren took the knife from Claire and asked, Is it safe? Claire shook her head. I can't tell. There's still something in this house. It's like trying to see through fog. All I know is what's right in front of me. Lauren looked at me. How about you? Is it safe? How the hell would I know? I told you, I'm not a psychic. She sounded like she was running out of patience. Not psychic, just sensitive. Sometimes when people are close to death, they can hear something, whispering to them from the other side. For whatever reason, Claire's talent has an effect on people like that. She's like a signal booster. A jolt of electricity ran up my spine, followed by a quick wave of nausea. The earth quaked and the house shook. I nearly lost my balance again. In an instant, it was over. I reflexively reached up and grabbed my throat, right where the phantom pain was beginning to subside. Did you guys feel that? Jerry shrugged. Feel what? Claire was holding on to Lauren for balance. Her head turned down as she took breaths. One of her hands was pressed against her throat. When she finally looked up, we shared the same thought. But she let me be the one to say it. Someone just died. Oh, snap, Jerry said. Jack's got the shining. Quick, what number am I thinking of? Lauren replied quickly. It doesn't work that way, you idiot. The number he was thinking of was 69. She turned her attention to her sister and asked, What did you see? Nothing, she answered. But I felt it. I looked at Jerry and gestured toward the door. He didn't need to be a mind reader to know what I meant. It was time to move. He led the way into the hall. We followed. Down the first flight of stairs. The ground was already in sight. Lauren screamed. We saw a crumpled heap on the landing of the second story, bleeding onto the carpet. Hope's lifeless body. Her terror-stricken face drained of all color. A kitchen knife protruding from the center of her throat. That must have been why she didn't make a sound. The killer cut off her voice box before she could alert anybody. Smart, because a simple scream is all it would take to bring the house running to meet them. Thanks a lot, Lauren. At this point, Bridget's scream just felt redundant. Tobias predictably pulled out his gun. "What happened?" he yelled. "Oh my god, oh my god." Bridget went to check for a pulse, but it was nothing more than a formality. We could all see that she was done for. After a few seconds, Bridget looked up and shook her head. I considered signaling for the others to make a break for the stairs, but Tobias' gun was seriously complicating the route of escape. "Somebody better start talking right now," he said. Jerry made a valiant attempt. "Hey, don't look at us. We were all hanging out upstairs together when this happened." "Why were you out of your room?" "We were planning our escape. Don't worry, T-Bone. I was going to come back for you." That's when Lauren reminded me the worst part of Hope's death. "Someone has to tell Wolfgang." "Tell me what?" I turned around to see the boy standing in the open doorway to his room. Lauren and Tobias moved fast, cutting off the line of sight. They talked over one another, speaking too quickly for me to understand either of them. Wolfgang walked right toward me, pushed his way between the two of them, and approached the body of his dead mother. And he looked down where she lay in a pool of fresh blood. The others were too focused on finding the right words to say or figuring out what was going on, casting blame and doubt. They were all too distracted to notice what I noticed. The briefest flicker of a smile on young Wolfgang's face.